Okay, in this demonstration that I call print painting, because I'm going to both be printing using the Gelli Plate and painting directly on the Gelli Plate, and then some of the prints that I've pulled at the end, I'm going to do more painting on those prints. And printmaking is loads of fun, but being organized is kind of important for this process, which can very quickly get out of control in a fun way. So I'm going to be pulling all these prints, doing different textures, and printing onto different substrates, which are backgrounds. So I've got a new canvas paper, which really I don't even think is canvas. It's just a paper with canvas texture, but I kind of like it. A Bristol paper, the ever famous paper bags that I love. What else do I got here? I have some file folders I cut up, and then this really kind of strange and interesting paper that's shiny on one side and rough on the other, that was a packing material for furniture, and I like it. So I've had these all ready to go. Then I've got my space ready to go with my Gelli Plate and my brayer. Now, kind of important to use open acrylic with the Gelli Plate. Open just means it has a longer drying and manipulation time. So I've got a tube of that. Then the question is, well, what if you don't have open acrylic in a tube? So that's where my recommendation of a retarding agent, something that slows the drying time. So I'm going to use Van Dyke Brown, and I'm going to mix. I really need to read the bottle. I think it's a couple of drops. I'll read it later. Okay, then mix that in with my palette knife. And I will also be using some acrylic paint today that isn't open, but I'm going to be using a thicker application and working faster. So in that case, it'll be okay. All right, so to roll out, here's a review. To roll out the ink, I just put a little blop on the end of my roller, and then as I'm rolling, here, I'll do it to the side. As I'm rolling, I kind of do this lifting up motion, and I go back and forth. And the reason for that is I want to get an even distribution of paint on my roller. Now, there's times you might deliberately want blobs, but I think it's important to know how to roll the ink out evenly. More pressure doesn't mean you're going to get more paint on that roller. So you don't need to push down very hard. And then I go across the surface. I have to pick up more ink, and then I go back and forth the other direction until it looks pretty even. Okay. Then I can start playing with various textures. So I have this floral, I don't know what it is, sort of floral screen that someone gave me. I have some on the front porch that you can come and get. So I put that down. This is some stencil thing. I got an art from scrap. Put that down. Then I'm going to directly pull a print. Okay, there's my first print. Now I'm going to remove these. Usually it's the ghost print. This is the second one that I find more interesting. So now I'm going to directly put paper on there again. Okay, there's print number 2, which I think is much more interesting. There's shadows, there's more depth. Okay. So that's the basics of rolling out. You want to roll it out on a piece of palette paper or something that's non-absorbent. Student last night was rolling out on a piece of paper and she said, I'm going through the paint so quickly. So you need a non-absorbent surface. So repeat the process again. Okay, this is another interesting piece of material I got at Michael's craft store. I like that I can twist it around like this. So I'm going to put that down. Stay. I'm going to put some of these candy wrappers on there.
Laura, what would a generic name be for the different materials that you're putting on top of the Gelli Plate, like what you're doing right now?
What would the what be?
A generic name for all of those things you're using before you do what you're doing now, like the netting and the.
Well, they're items with texture. That's what I'm doing right now. And I mean, it can be, you know, like I found the candy wrappers. I don't know what this thing is called. It's some sort of decorative netting that comes on a roll. So that's sort of the generic name there.
Thank you.
Okay. So here's the first print, and I'm getting these white shapes. Okay, it's really the second one I'm after. I don't know that I'm going to get that much from this. Maybe not. Hoping to get a little bit more. Not much on the candy wrapper, but I love that netting. Love that. Okay. Now I'm going to show you what if you want to roll on 2 colors and have one fade into the other. That's called an ombre. And I can roll off some of my ink onto this paper before I go to my next color. Seems important to have, this is what I have a hard time describing, like how much ink. Like that last pass was a little thin. Sometimes it takes a couple of times to build up enough ink on there to get good prints. So don't be discouraged initially. Okay, so this is a stencil, so you can buy stencils online. I can tell you where to get those. I like Stencil Girl, it's really good. Okay, then I can come in and I can make random marks with different tools. So I'm just going to do this repeat pattern here. Here's the canvas paper. To do one on Bristol paper. Okay, I'm going to save these. I'll come back and do some more painting on them in a little bit. I like those. Now, what if you want to work a little more directly? So I can kind of randomly roll and then okay. Here's some lace that I like. So I could do texture on some parts and leave others alone. Then I could actually draw on there with some paint. It's a little thick. Spread that out. Okay, here's my file folder. So what happens through playing, you're going to like some surfaces better than others. And you'll kind of catalog that in your brain. Things to be repeated or not repeated. Okay, so there's that. I still have a little bit more. Okay, now I'm going to shift gears into painting directly on some of these prints that I made. So like this one, I might come in kind of quickly and I don't like maybe that paint being so thick. If I want to scrape some off, I could do that. And what I'm going to try and do here is I've got some more transparent layers with interesting pattern. I want to build up maybe some thicker layers that are less transparent. Okay, I'm going to pick these 3. Okay. So in addition to painting, I can also do a little bit of drawing on there, and I'm going to use these, my new favorite, the water-soluble graphite. And it's great to have so many. Hopefully that takes away some of the pressure. We're just exploring different materials and layers. You'll like some you won't. That's okay. I like having several, at least 3, so I can work quickly and loosely from one to the next. I like the drawing because it has something of a finer mark for contrast. Okay, now I'm going to take a damp brush and actually I'll say brushes and activate this water-soluble graphite. Now the open acrylic is still wet enough that I can manipulate that paint too. That's still wet enough. I can scratch through. I'm doing a little more kind of scrubby here, letting it blend right on the surface. Okay, so I've got these 3. Now I'm going to add a little more color. I'm trying to get the paint on there a little bit thicker. So again, I'm going to hold it. I've got a big glob of paint, 45-degree angle. I'm trying to overlay some of this so this goes back and the blue comes forward. So contrast of marks, color, thicker, thinner paint. This looks like some sort of catastrophe just occurred over here. Okay. Oh, one more thing I wanted to show you. Okay, so I think you get the basic idea of layering these. It's hard not to get attached to them at a certain point, which is why I like having a lot going on. If you don't finish them, that's okay. Even if you just get your prints today, we'll do more work with this next week. Something that's really fun to do at the end then is just use the leftover paint on your palette and just roll, roll, roll. And just play with the leftover paint. Don't let that go to waste. The makeup sponge. This is a great tool. So non-traditional tools besides just the brush. We got the brayer, the Gelli Plate, the Stencils. What else? Looking for one of my stencils here. Okay, so the makeup sponge is great because I can put something down and then pick up paint on a flat surface, and then just by stamping down, I'm going to get a nice crisp transfer. You can get a bag of these at the drugstore. Okay, so there's that. This is another great way of building up interactive layers of color in a non-traditional way. Okay, so there's that. Then if I add a little bit of water to my makeup sponge, I can draw with it and get these transparent atmospheric marks. Okay, and then one last thing. This was kind of random last night. I still had more paint. And so I took my palette paper, put it on a sheet of paper. This is really satisfying. And I scratched in with my fingernails. You could also use a stick if you want. So the ink is going to transfer and you'll get interesting marks. Keep moving that piece of paper all around. Okay, so then I have this piece of paper that, to me, that has a lot of movement in it, and I could build up more paint on that in another point if I want to. Some people save the palette paper too and use it little bits in their work. Okay, so now I have a really interesting textural ground that I can do more painting on. And that's it.
But it's all good